How's it going? My name is Jefferson Clark. Just continuing with these videos here. Give us, some kind of marching orders here for the Democrats. One of the things that I noticed of the Trump campaign, and probably everybody's noticed this, right? Their goal is to overwhelm or at least keep the pace in terms of managing the narrative and having an equivalent response to any kind of social media output that the Democrats have. I've noticed it specifically with mine. I don't know if anybody else has noticed that. So with that, when they're doing something like that, and I noticed it with Musk too, the Democrats, we should be encouraging everybody in the Democratic Party to post their ideas out there on social media. Anything, be as active as the right is in terms of online activity or content or what have you, right? We have to match their intensity. It is something that I noticed specifically. Their goal is to blunt or help manage that, that information flow, and their way of keeping the left off balance is kind of overwhelming everybody with a bunch of information. And so we need everybody in the Democratic Party that has access to social media to post as if, we want the same type of velocity in terms of response and information output. It doesn't even have to be, it doesn't even have to be anything particular, but that's one of the things I've noticed specifically with this Republican Party. Their goal is to match that information velocity output, or at least blunt any kind of momentum that you can create with your own output. And so I don't know how you would describe it other than, just the idea generation. The more ideas that we have generated from the Democrats, the better, right? It helps push back some of that overwhelming activity that this administration likes to do. They're trying to win the information war, basically, is what they're trying to do. And I just noticed it with this administration. So if they have a bunch of different tasks going on, their goal is to just overwhelm the Democrats so that they don't have a chance to respond or maintain balance. And so my message to the Democrats is we should be encouraging the Democrats all across the United States to post their ideas just as frequent and as often as you would see on the right. It would help kind of blunt some of the momentum that they're creating with their content creators. Kind of like an objection in a courtroom. A lot of times an attorney will just object just to kind of impede some of that momentum. Well, the same idea here with this information, this information output or creativity output, we want to match the same type of velocity that they have on the Republican side. So Democrats all across the United States, we want to encourage people to participate as much as possible and not to fear. That way we can kind of blunt some of the momentum and momentum and kind of fight back in terms of, information output. Not all of it has to be all that relevant necessarily, but the idea is to kind of push back on that information warfare that's kind of going on out on the internet and out on social media. Because every time I post, I've noticed, they pay incredible attention to a lot of the posts that I have. I'll give you an example. So I had admired the French swimmers, right? They had a particular Texas flavor. I think it was out of the AP. And, I had just said, I live vicariously through all athletes all across the world. And I'm particularly fond of France because of President Macron. So, and then today, what President Trump did to match that or to rebut that was do an executive order announcing, presidential fitness standards that he had Bryson DeChambeau and who else was there? Harrison Butker was there as well. It's an effort to combat that information. It's an information warfare, and so we have to match that same level of content creation and output on our side all across the world, which kind of makes it tougher. It definitely makes it tougher because we are at a strategic disadvantage, because most of the countries that would be aligned with us are a lot more controlling and restrictive in terms of what they can and cannot put out on social media. So it's very, very important for us. That's really why this administration was able to win the online content creation, is because the right has been, has the most, has the activity, one, but anyone on the left that is on that side of the spectrum is in the countries that would kind of help combat some of that online activity. They're a lot more restrictive. And so I would say to the Western countries around the world, to my friends in Europe and Australia and Japan and China and Brazil, what we're looking for, we need to match that hard right information flow. And the only way we can do that is if you allow your left, the more liberal, democratic, or, left-leaning political aisle activists on social media to be as active in the American information system or information universe. That's the only reason why President Trump and Elon Musk were as successful as they were online, is because they have a huge advantage in terms of numbers and in terms of content creation. However, if you go around the world, most of the countries align with the left side of politics. And if we can include them within our information environment, we would outnumber them 10-1. So my call right now is to all of those countries that align with the left side of politics, or the Democrats, is to encourage your people on the left to be as active as they can. And we will drown out President Trump and the right. We will crush them, and it won't even be close. And so my call right now is to encourage all of those countries around the world on the left side, aligned with the Democrats. We need as many content creators and information generators, to post things online in or on American social media posts. On X, I'm talking on any of the American platforms. And by doing that, you will overwhelm this right-leaning government and output information. And we should overwhelm them like 10-1 easily. They wouldn't even stand a chance. The issue is they're not as free when it comes to online posting. And so it would be nice if we could match that somehow. I don't know how we would do that, but that is one of the things that is really killing the Democrats is that information generation and content creation that the right is able to do. They're able to generate a lot of information and responses very quickly, right? Without any, they have troll farms, and then they have bots that go and create it. And most of the activity online from the right is probably fake. But if we just had more help from our left-leaning friends here in the States, as well as all over the world, the right wouldn't have a chance. And by suppressing that online activity, you're only hurting the left. You're not helping them. So the more activity that we have from the left-leaning activists online, the better it will be. It will drown out and crush President Trump. That's one of the things I've noticed. So I guess my point here is we need more left activists here in the United States and around the world, in all countries, posting, responses and rebuttals to every single thing that the right does online and on social media to defeat that information over, that overwhelming effect that the right has. And I believe with all the countries that we have around the world on our side of things, we would dominate Trump and all of MAGA and all of the right, and it wouldn't even be close. But we have to be comfortable with, whatever goes out online, it is kind of a freedom of speech type thing, and that's how we have to look at it. That helps us combat that overwhelming impact that they're having. It was one of the things that allowed me to beat Musk as bad as I did, was I can generate content almost like a bot myself and not even think about it. And my responses are like rapid fire. And so trying to keep up with that, it was very, very difficult for them. And so this is why I say, okay, when you have information that's moving that fast, right? We have to get all of our Democratic friends and all of our Democratic players at state, local, and federal levels all on the same page based on different issues that we're interested in addressing. Number one is economics, right? Economics here in the countries, we're going through a very, very interesting technological change, and how to ensure that technological change is properly harnessed, right? And then also, distributes that opportunity and income, far better than concentrating it with a few people that we have here in the West. And I don't know what that answer is. That's why I'd be very interested in to see how China does, manages their technological environment, because, they don't have the issues that we have with some of our our tech guys. And so it would be very educational to see how they manage that. It's another reason why I'm very fond of China. I love China and President Xi. I love them. And in this case, I'm calling on them, China, Europe, even Russia, everyone around the world. In order for things to calm down, we're going to need everybody's help to overwhelm and crush MAGA and President Trump, mainly Trump and his group. Just crush their ability to generate information and content online. And if we included everybody around the world with that mission, we would destroy Trump, and they wouldn't even, they'd be a squeak. But right now they have the overwhelming advantage that I've noticed. And they're not shy about saying so either. So I do think, if these countries around the world did open up some of their social media feeds and were a little bit more open to that activity, things would change in a heartbeat. And it would go to the benefit of the left and the Democrats versus going against them. With all of these countries closing up and controlling social media like they are, all it really has done is just given the right a huge, numbers advantage that they would never, ever have. It's when they start cracking down on the left and controlling social media like a stranglehold that the right just overwhelmed them. And that's what's happened. So my call right now is to my friends in China, India, Europe, Russia, Australia, Japan, Korea, Canada, Brazil, everywhere around the world. We need all those left-leaning activists that you have to match everything that the right produces here in America. We want to overrun them as if they're not even a flea, because they really aren't when it comes to numbers. And the more that we have those left activists out there online, the more opportunity and the better our odds are of being successful. And when you crack down on that freedom flow of information, that's what's given this far right, the ability to be as successful as they are. But if you were to open that back up and allow the leftists to come back on there and be as active as they were, adults only, MAGA would, they wouldn't stand it. They wouldn't have a prayer. And so that's what I'm advocating here for. So we need all the content creators that we have on the left out there producing information and content, so that it's not so far right concentrated, so that we match that velocity of information that the right has. And I'm 100% confident that if we had the lefties here in the United States on the Democrat side, and we had the rest of the world, it would be a 10-to-1 odds favorite for the left. So my call is for everybody around the world, activists on the left, we need you to come out on social media to just overwhelm the right. That's what we got to do when it comes to this information warfare. And it would work to our advantage, not disadvantage. Instead, what we've done is close them all off. And so now all you have running around is far-right lunatics that really are no smarter than a Neanderthal. So, this technological information revolution it changes rapidly. But I noticed that information velocity that the right does, and they do that to overwhelm the left. And that's why it looks like it's so heavily favored on the right side. But like I said, if we have everyone around the world, every country around the world participate, most of them are going to be on the left side of things. Most of them are already. We would crush Trump and MAGA and the far right. We just need them out there participating, that's all. So if we could have all of our friends around the world help kind of squash Trump and all of his far-right loonies out there, the better it will be. And I'm calling on people from Russia, I'm calling on people from Europe, I'm calling on people from Canada, from everywhere. Because if we don't do that, the same problem that we have here in the United States is going to come to your country. And so the only way to combat that is meet it with the same kind of content velocity that we need from you. Yeah, so and this is all part of this technological information age change that we're all kind of going through right now. And it occurred to me, that's how I was able to be as competitive as I was with Musk, was because I could generate information rapid and my responses were spot on, and I just happened to have very, 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 very good connections with very, 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 very powerful people. And so that all kind of combined to help overrun Musk. But I love Elon Musk. I have no ill will to the man. I've forgiven and letting go. I mean, I wasn't perfect either. So my goal now is to engage him and help. We can't have this far right business running the show like this. There's got to be balance, and we don't have it right now. And so we're going to need someone like Musk to kind of help balance that out a little bit. I think he's gotten what he's wanted anyway, in terms of the social justice issues that he wasn't a fan of. Those have been removed. And so I think that's been huge. And, so the things that were important to him, he's pretty much gotten. The only thing that there's some minor issues I think that he didn't get that I think would go to our benefit. And it'd be nice to have him on our side, just from having gone up against him. Let's see here. I'm trying to think what else. There's a lot of good news out there. Let's see here. I had some ideas in terms of, let's see here, trade. I was sitting there thinking, when these bills are produced, what we need is a value. We need a number, what the value of that bill is. What's the value of it? How much money is that worth? Or some kind of point system, so that way we can value some of these negotiations that we're doing with President Trump, like we're doing like a Moneyball situation. So, I'm sitting there thinking, my initial thought was, okay, our goal is to get rid of all the tariffs that he's instituted. And I'm sitting there saying, well, what can I do to get that? You know, the one thing I don't want him to do is to redistrict Texas. You know, I want to leave that the way it is. So I said, you know, we want all the tariffs gone, 100%. And in return, I don't want you to redistrict Texas. I want the permission to pursue a beautiful young lady on Fox Business that I am head over heels for. If she'd give me the time of day. Let's see. And let's see what else. Yeah, and then I also said, you know, if we drop, you know, this Epstein saga and just let it go, you know, have him let go and get rid of the, you know, this Russia hoax investigation of, you know, the prior administrations, you know, knock those two off, let those go away, remove all the tariffs that we can, and in return for him not redistricting Texas, because I'm going to turn Texas blue. And it looks like it's got a pretty good shot at it right now. I mean, as bad of a job as they've done here. Let's see here. Other big news, VP Harris, you know, Vice President Harris ran, you know, she produced a book that I plan on buying. I'm a huge fan of VP Harris for too many reasons to count. And if she were to run for president, I wouldn't run unless she gave me the express consent, because I owe a lot of what I have to VP Harris. And so my loyalty is there, and I love her. I love her and Biden. I'm a big fan of both of them. And I don't think they got a very, very fair shake on things in a lot of ways. But I think people are beginning to see, you know, that what they were doing was what they should have been doing the whole time. So whatever VP Harris chooses to do, I am in 100% supportive of whatever she does. And I'm a big fan, regardless of whatever the right thinks. Let's see here. There was a good movie. Let's see here, Moneyball. There was a good article about Moneyball in the New York Times. New York Times is one of my favorites. I love the New York Times. But yeah, I was gonna say, Moneyball's like one of my favorite movies of all time, and I loved it because Billy Beane, him, you know, doing that, you know, taking statistics to that level of baseball was what I initially started doing when I was in college. The director that I worked for at the time, he was doing a lot of that statistical analysis, sabermetrics, and applying it to business, unlike it had been done in the past. And then that movie came out, and I was like, wow, he's basically doing a lot of the same things we were doing at work. So yeah, big fan of Billy Beane and the Oakland A's and what they did with that, and the guts he had to go up against everybody like he did. That's really what I loved the most, was his willingness to take on an entire league like he did. That's what I loved, and that's what this whole Democratic situation kind of reminds me of. I revel in those situations where I'm the underdog always. Let's see here. On the social issues, social justice issues, I know like DEI, LGBTQ, ESG, a lot of those, you know, those are very important. Those are very, very important issues. But that's where the Democrats have taken the most loss, those items, those specific issues. And you see it in everything that's going on in the government, right? And all the changes that they're making. And so that's why I say, if you're going to champion those things, you're going to get crushed, because that's what the right won on a lot of cases. And so I say we have to re-educate our population to tell them why these issues are important to them, and why we should advocate for them. But they aren't the top of mind. Top of mind, in my opinion, is economics, making sure that prosperity is distributed, to where people are happy with what's going on. And then this technological change that's going on, part of that information warfare. But anyway, my name is Jefferson Clark, run for mayor, and yeah, appreciate everything, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.